Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Gonna jump right in here. I have my lovely panelists turn their cameras on and join me on camera. I'm not gonna keep you guys waiting, I promise. Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining and big
Maddie.
welcome. Thank
Hi,
you so much.
Rach.
Hi. Thank you so much for being here, Misha. We really appreciate it. Everyone, I don't really need to introduce either of these people here, but Misha Collins and Rachel Miner, thank you so much for joining us for this panel. We're looking forward to it. Hi, everyone.
Thank you. Hi. I think we do need to introduce one person on this Zoom, and that is Rachel's pillow. Who is this? Is that the
So,
Constitution? What are we looking at?
it's quotes about books from many famous authors. Got like Emerson and Austen and yeah, just lots of
Well, how very literary.
thank you. Well, you know.
That's pretty great. You probably have some pretty good dreams when you fall asleep on that.
Thank yes. Right. I definitely have found a way to be constantly covered in book, just live in books.
Yeah, I like it.
I think all of us are doing a pretty good job with the book theme here. We all
Yeah.
Yeah,
have,
mine are all they're just a facade of covers. There's
oh,
no real books back there, but
of course not.
Makes sense.
I'm like half knickknacks and half
my
book.
interior decorator did this. This whole unit came as one
Right.
piece from Amazon. So yeah,
Nice. And they did a good job.
thanks. Yeah, they look real.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, moving into kindness. I want to start by just like the last one, kind of touching on what we are hoping to achieve for this panel. And we want to talk about kindness in activism and how we drive social change, leading with kindness and compassion first. I know that that is something that we touched on in the last opening session for those of you who are there, in terms of talking about, the importance of leading with kindness and the importance of treating strangers with kindness. So that's definitely the message that we want to be sending here, and giving people kind of tangible ways to apply that as well. So I want to jump straight into my little questions here. And I'm gonna go to Misha first. As both an actor and activist, has your platform allowed you to model kindness in ways that you didn't expect?
Oh gosh, what an interesting question. And yes, I'm certain that the answer is yes. I think I mean that's it's an interesting question that you're asking about modeling because I think that the notion of modeling is something that I've reflected on a lot as a parent. You hear that it's a good idea not to just tell your kids to behave in a certain way, but to model a certain behavior in front of your children, and that's actually the best way to teach them. If you act in a certain way, chances are your kids are going to try to just emulate that because that's what they see their grown up doing. And I think that that is instructive for all of us in all of our social interactions. I think that if we think about how we're behaving as potentially setting an example for other people, I think that it can be a useful check for our own selves. Like, oh, right, I got to remember that the way I act in this situation is potentially going to either inspire other people to, act in a similar manner, or, in a similar good manner, or the converse is true. You can set an example that shows people, well, it's okay you can get away with being a shitty person. And I think we actually, unfortunately, have a lot of those examples in society right now. And unfortunately, I think social media is one of these platforms where people don't keep their behaviors in check. It's not like an authentic social interaction. It's this parasocial interaction where we're allowing often our worst selves to come out, and the algorithms reward us for bad behaviors. They reward us for being inflammatory. They reward us with more interactions if we say something that's inflammatory. And as a consequence, a lot of us are not modeling good behavior. And I found myself doing that on my, large platform, having a lot of followers. Sometimes I feel like saying, fuck you. And in so doing, I'm not modeling good kindness and good behavior. And it's a really complicated moment, I think, because we have these reward systems that are preferencing bad behavior. We have to be more vigilant. My I said, I think I typed, I don't even remember what the context was, and I'm quite certain it was on Twitter. But this is like a year or two ago. I typed fuck you in response to something and sent it. And my girlfriend was like, Misha, don't you be one of those people. And it was such a good, just little gentle reminder, right? Like I can be a part of the problem or I can try not to. And that's something that we can all think about. So it doesn't really matter how big someone's platform is. We all have people that are looking at what we're saying, and we all are potentially amplifying negativity or amplifying positivity. And I don't want to be too much of a rose-colored glasses person about this. Unfortunately, I think you can be very effective at implementing social change through fear and violence and negativity and hate and all of those emotions that can be harnessed. And we all are faced with a choice. Like we can either choose to align ourselves with those things in order to affect change, or we can choose another path that is sometimes more difficult, but that is always more rewarding, because not only are you having a positive impact on the world if you're choosing to lead with empathy and kindness, but you're also positively impacted by yourself when you do that. And if you're trying to affect change in the world through violence and hatred and division, that's going to impact you on the inside as well. So you're harming yourself and you're harming the world at the same time. I don't know. There's my quasi philosophical rant.
No, I loved everything you were saying, and it had my mind going too, because it's what world do you want to create, and also what will that world end up looking like? It makes me think of where the historic things like the French Revolution, where it's like we're going to create this grand change, it's going to be completely different, but they go about it by violent means, and what do you end up creating is actually just a really violent regime that ultimately falls apart because of that. And I think that, like, in terms of creating long-term change, we really do have to look at what methods we're using and what future we're creating. And I think about, I've seen a lot, like, to me, some of the saddest things I've seen when there is someone being cruel publicly is how many people that are even really good people end up in response changing themselves and becoming cruel and modeling that for their kids, etc. Like, it's okay, someone is out there making fun of people's looks, and then it becomes the way to attack that person is by saying, oh, they're so ugly and this and that, and then our kids learn, well, that's how you win, is by doing that. And we've now created that more in the world. So I think, to me, that is actually how evil takes hold, if you want to call it evil, how negativity takes hold, how it has power, is when we change. And then we also have the power in any given moment to change things in the opposite direction. That's what that's my dissertation on Misha's opening statement.
That was a good one.
I thought it was some really good points.
Yeah, for sure it is. To you, Rachel, I know you also have the both actor and activist thing going on, but speaking specifically to your experience here as an executive director, how do you balance the need for strategic decisions with maintaining that kindness and empathy within your leadership position?
Um, well, and I don't know if this is right or wrong. It's something that I always think it just is, what I believe is that ultimately, I don't believe you can do good if you compromise. I don't believe in doing good on the exterior. I think you can get more, it can be more effective in the short term. So you can, like, if I think I always choose the this might take longer, but let's do it right. Let's treat each other right. Let's truly be the things that we're claiming to be. Let's start from the inside where no one's looking and how we treat each other. And then this, Meg, like that's more important to me. And then I'll compromise in saying, yeah, maybe we didn't get that project done in time, or maybe it could have been better if I had just said, I'm going to hire the person who gets it done quickest and yell at them until they do whatever. Like I'm sure there would be things that were more successful in the short run. But I think that what happens then is you get a lot of attention, and then people find out what was going on behind the scenes, and then that undermines the whole message that you're putting out to begin with, which is that kindness is, and then you're not only not doing as much good, I think you're doing harm at that point, because I think most of us are experiencing a lot of injustice in the world and a lot of falsehood and people looking out for themselves. So if we're told, no, actually kindness exists, and then we're told, no, that's a lie, that was that was a facade, I think it's going to take a lot longer to trust. So that's where I'm coming from. And Misha somehow has let me get away with it, even if we're
Well,
slower and not always hitting the mark perfectly.
I mean, I think that that's also partly because in truth, Rach, you lead with tyranny. I mean, fear and intimidation are the
Yes,
main tools that you
it is true.
deploy in your leadership position. And so I think that I I will say I think that one can, effectively lead an organization and motivate people through fear. It's one of the great motivators out there, and a lot of leaders do run organizations based on fear, the fear of being fired or demoted, or even publicly called out by your superiors in front of your coworkers. All of those things can be incredibly powerful motivators. But it's an interesting situation with random acts because that option is not readily available when you're dealing with an all volunteer workforce, because people have the I quit option readily available. So it actually, you are sort of painted in a corner, Rach, in this situation where you have like part of the payment that the staff of Random Acts get is being in this community that is, a warm, loving, empathetic place to relate to one another. And you are facilitating that, you're leading that energy from the ED position. And if you didn't, I don't think it would work. I mean, I spoke to somebody yesterday who is on the board of many large, prestigious, well-funded nonprofits. And she was like, I can't believe that you all have done so much with an all-volunteer staff. That's incredible. And it is very rare. Um, and it is very much that something can function as well as Random Acts does on a volunteer basis. And I think it's a testament to you, Rach, and your leadership and the manner in which you allow people to feel like they belong to a community, and that there's this like network of mutual support that goes on within the staff. And without that, it wouldn't work. I don't think we'd be here. I don't think we'd be having this conversation were it not for that. So Thanks for figuring that out.
Thank you for saying,
Thank
but
you for
also I
figuring
will
out
say
how to manipulate our staff.
that's right. That is right. No, in all honesty, it's to me one of the most encouraging things about humanity. There's, whatever other things I'm seeing in the world, this staff teaches me constantly that people actually work harder and put more into things often when they're motivated by just being treated well and be caring and being recognized for their quality, their positive qualities, and being supported. And also it's an amazing thing that with this stuff you can say to people, hey, you can take any time you need. If you're not feeling up to this, just don't go to the meeting, etc. I'm very, very lax with that stuff in terms of I trust the staff. And I say, you don't even need to give an explanation. I know if you're going through something, you're going through it. And people show up anyway. And I think a lot of the times they show up all the more because it suddenly becomes a group where we trust each other. And then you want to continue to earn that trust. And to me, like, I wish that you saw that model more often, because it's really exciting to me that it does work. Anyway, and that's nothing to do with me. That was me taking a chance a lot of the time and then going like, oh, it actually is, wow, this is really, really amazing to witness.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I can attest to the manipulation has worked on me for sure. Misha, going back to kind of people not being so certain that this is an effective tool, how do you approach the people who are skeptical that kindness can be an effective motivator in change?
I mean, I don't know if that's something that you can easily persuade people of. I think that has to be an experiential or intuitive insight. I do think it's something that this is a good example of something that can be modeled, like do it, just do the thing. And if people say, well, shit, that appears to be effective, that's, I think, the most effective way to persuade people. I think that there's, certainly an argument for violent uprising in the face of injustice. I think that these are arguments that philosophers could have. I think that there's an argument for, violently defending yourself against attack. I'm not making an argument for like every action you have to take should be one, imbued with perfect Buddhist pacifism. Although part of me actually thinks that is true. But I do think that the most lasting and impactful change that you can make comes from a place of empathy and compassion. I think that in general, actions that create change that come from a place of hatred or division or fear end up having an impermanent impact on society. And I think that we have witnessed a positive trend in the last 1,000 years toward a more compassionate, more inclusive, more equitable world, far from perfect. But I think that trend is because those changes tend to have a more lasting impact, and the backlashes, the temporary backlashes, tend to come from a place of negativity. I mean, we look back at the interstitial periods of fascism in our history. It's not like we have always been subject to fascism. They're temporary, and the 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 longer arcs are of, this is just an example, but I'm talking about like on a geopolitical level, the longer arc is toward, liberal democracy globally. Even more authoritarian regimes are, tend to trend that way over time. So I think that the momentum is on our side, but I also am clear-eyed that like we have to stay vigilant and keep working and not throw our hands up in despair, because there are these pendulum swings, and we've got to keep the overall momentum going. But I think, to answer your question a little bit more clearly, I think that the most effective way to persuade people that it's an effective means to affect change is to actually do it, show people by doing it, affect some change, no matter how small. I think that that's very much what Random Acts is about, sending the message that you can have a positive impact, no matter how small, and you never know how big the ripple effect is going to be of that action, right? So doing the good work in the world, whatever it is the way that you can persuade people. I don't think you can tell people that, that's the way to be. I think prescriptive, didactic finger wagging is very rarely an effective way to persuade anybody of anything.
I agree. For
Agreed.
sure. Rachel, kind of, if we're spinning off of that a little bit, but how have you seen kindness help build resilience and trust in this organization? We were talking about a little bit with Misha brought it up, but like, how have you seen that those effects, the ripple effect that some people are bringing up in the chat? How have you seen? Can you give any sort of example of working within this organization?
Absolutely. I've seen a huge shift over the years that I've been here, because I kept kind of, veering toward policies that were more and more toward the trusting, listening, leaving space, and realizing that there are, I think one of the things that I felt was important is that, like, to be kind, as I had said in the earlier panel, I think to be kind, you have to be receptive to what the other person's needs are and listen to them. It can't just be a prescriptive thing of, oh, I think kindness is blah, so this should make you happy. And I think that within the staff, we really, I think, all worked really hard to make that kind of the core of how we do our acts, but also how we treat each other, is to make sure it's coming from a place of what do you need, and not a place of I know best. Again, back to kind of the finger wagging. But I think that that's the shift that I've seen through the staff that has really been most beautiful to watch, is that more and more it's a group of people that really listen to and respect each other and give each other like autonomy over whatever spaces that they're in charge of, and realize that there are all different ways to do things, that there are many different, correct ways to do things. I think that was one of the things I had the hardest time with, and very early on, is when people would be like, this is just how it's done. And I'm like, in your experience in your country with your educational background, etc. Yes, but guess what? There are a lot of other ways to do things, and let's listen and hear what other people have to say. And I think that has been the biggest shift, is watching all of you learn from each other and grow, and that's been really, really exciting to witness.
That I agree too. I think it's definitely, I've been here, God, like 3 years now, something like that. But yeah, I've felt it too. And I think especially, I mean, it definitely is a community, like we were saying. And I love that people in the chat are also bringing up the ripple of kindness and how, the things can make a huge difference. And someone said that asking what someone needs before acting with presumption is so important. And I think that was a really good highlight of what you said there, because that's definitely what we try to do here.
Yeah. And honestly, the most exciting thing too is when people then take it to their workspaces and whatever. When I hear that someone like had a conversation with their boss and said, actually, I've seen this really work. And like, again, to me, that's a ripple, that continues for good, of people finding ways that, like, actually we can treat each other well and respect each other and listen to each other and encourage each other to take care of ourselves. And that actually breeds a better working environment where we're getting more done. It's more productive.
Yeah, for sure. Touching on that kind of what you just said, activism can be exhausting, as we all know. It can be a definite burden for us to take onto our shoulders. How can kindness help activists manage that burnout and maintain that passion? I'm gonna toss it to Misha first. Sorry, putting you on the spot.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, activism can show up in all kinds of ways. And recently for me, I was doing a lot of political campaigning, and and that was layered on top of a lot of work travel and a couple of big projects that I was working on, and trying to take care of my kids and trying to stay healthy. And between all of those things, I really tapped myself out, and I kind of knew I was in a sprint to the finish, and I really wanted to apply myself as, I wanted to feel like I had done everything I could leading up to this November election. And when the election was over, I realized that I had done too much, and I'm still unpacking what my own psychology going into it was, but uh I think that I got too much ego tied up in it. Like, I think I started to think, this one person, I have the power to turn the tide of this election. Like, I look back at something like uh Bush v. Gore in 2000, and how it came down to just a few hundred votes in Florida. And then I start thinking, like, well, maybe this is one of those situations, and if I just, if I knock on a few more doors, or if I fly to one more state, I can maybe, be the one that tips the scales. And and I realized after it, like, oh my God, you're so full of yourself. And if I hadn't falsely wrapped my own, like, inflated my own ego in the process, I would have had a lot more balance. I think I would have been like, well, I'm doing my part. I'm making my contribution here. I know I'm making a contribution, but I probably could have done 80% of the contribution with 20% of the work, and then not been too tired to play with my kids. So um, I think one of the things is to really be aware that no one of us is actually going to independently change the world. And if you solve a problem in the world, there are going to be millions of other problems that also need tending to. So the work itself is never going to be done, period. And you're never going to get to a finish line that is satisfying. Like, there, I fixed it, is not something that we're ever going to say.
Check. Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Mhm.
It's all a process. And we're living in accordance with our values, and we're living aligned with a mission to make a contribution, whatever that contribution is. But we're not just don't we shouldn't delude ourselves into thinking that there's some imaginary finish line and we are going to check a box and be done. It's all a process. So then find a cadence, this, like, the stupid sprint versus marathon analogy. It's not even a marathon. you know it's a long walk, and we just have to keep plodding along, and taking time to stop and smell the roses along the way. And if you don't do that, and I know this for myself, it's a lesson that I keep learning over and over again. If you don't take care of yourself in the process, you're actually not going to be able to do the work anyway.
Yeah.
So might as well not delude yourself into thinking that you can do it all, and really focus on finding that balance in the process. I'm referencing my girlfriend a lot for some reason in this conversation, but she was, running this nonprofit organization, and she grew it from having, a handful of employees to having 40 full-time employees. And the revenue had quintupled or was 10 times higher than when she started. And by any measure, it was a huge success what she'd done with the organization. But at the same time, she was actually like totally exhausting and tapping herself out in the process. And ultimately that became unsustainable, right? Like she actually couldn't really do it anymore, or didn't want to do it anymore. Like she'd lost the joy for that project because it was too much for her. So um, there's a lesson in that. Like we can give too much of ourselves and then burn out. There's a friend of mine who made a documentary about a priest, a Zen priest in Japan, who is like the guy that there was an article about him in the New Yorker. Um, he was the guy that people would call when they were on the brink of suicide. Like he had this incredible roster of names of people who he had essentially pulled back, literally and figuratively, from the ledge, saved their lives when they were thinking of killing themselves. And he never turned his phone off. He was available at 3 o'clock in the morning. He was available at 5 a.m. and he was available at noon. He never stopped working, and he was always available to save people. And this documentary is about how he has hypertension and is drinking himself to death and is like self-medicating. And you can see this incredible and poignant irony in this man who is giving so much of himself to prevent suicides that he's literally killing himself. And that's kind of a metaphor for how we can behave in the world if we're not balanced in the process. So that's something I know, Rach, that you've been really working on with the staff of Random Acts, is making sure that it's a lot of an extra burden to take on. To most of the people who work for Random Acts are full-time students or have full-time jobs, and you're also asking them to make a contribution to another organization on a part-time basis. And with families, that can be a lot. So finding that balance and making sure that, you're, if you want to shine a bright light on the world, your light has to be shining from
Yeah.
it. And you can't do that if you exhaust yourself.
Yeah. We can't show up for others if we're
Right.
completely depleted. It's just, yeah. But thank you, Misha, for saying everything you were saying. That was just really honest and well thought through. And I think something I think probably all go through as humans. I think that is a struggle, at least particularly in this time. I think the narratives that we're raised on are these hero narratives of, oh, it's one, there's one person and you just push for a little while, you do these incredible feats, and then the whole world is saved. And you did it. And I think that I don't think it's a negative thing. I think we're drawn to that light of, yes, I want to do good. I want to be that good. And then we can get caught up in that storyline that I think is a complete false narrative. I don't think that I think, as you were saying, I don't think that ever exists. I think it's a whole lot of us working really hard and getting 3 steps forward and then taking 2 steps back. And it's all the small works. What I see when society is really working is all the teachers and mentors and people who did acts of kindness and parents and whatever out there that actually did that hard work that probably went unnoticed. And that's the people holding together society. I think there are people holding together communities all over the place that never get acknowledged for it. And to me, that I want to see that story in the world more often, because I think that we fall into that trap you were talking about less if we just kind of knew this other thing was an option, and something to really admire and want to be in the world. But it was really beautiful. So thank you for sharing.
Well, you too. Thanks, Mitch.
You guys are both equally bad at taking compliments.
Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that, Maddie.
You made fun of me for it the first time around, so it's my revenge. The last question that I have for a group discussion thing before we start taking some questions from everyone, I do want to say, if you guys do have a question, please utilize the Q&A box. There are a lot of you, and I want to make sure we answer as many questions as we can. So I want to make sure we use that Q&A box. The chat moves too fast for me to be able to come back and reference things. So please, the Q&A box at the bottom, on the bottom of your screens, please leave your questions in there. And a gentle reminder that we love Supernatural. This is about kindness. Please keep your questions on topic, and we're going to go ahead and answer those after my last question here, which is something that we kind of talked about at the beginning of this, but in polarizing times, what advice do you have for using kindness to bridge those ideological or cultural divides? And I'm going to toss it to Misha first.
I would say that this sort of goes back to the finger wagging that we were talking about earlier, but I think that trying to persuade people of your position is much less effective than trying to listen to people. And when you listen to someone who's from a different perspective, you have the opportunity to find common ground, but also to allow that person to be susceptible to, allow that person to be open to a conversation with you. Because the minute we start staking out our position, and it's almost a reflex, and it's a reflex that's been reinforced by how social media works, where we want to tell people how they're wrong, or we want to tell people what is right. And in so doing, we're just further, we're further deepening the divide. So I think listening is really the secret. Just briefly, I have spent some time trying to develop a screenplay that's based on the life of Daryl Davis, who is a Black musician who persuaded a couple hundred Klansmen to abandon the KKK. And he did it not by telling them that racism was wrong or being a member of the Klan was immoral, but by simply listening to them and having conversations with them. And all of these guys were like, "Oh shit! Well, now I'm like friends with a black guy. I don't think I can hold on to this ideology anymore." Um, so. And he did that by listening, by just sitting down and having conversations and listening. And the impact is like astonishing and measurable.
Yeah,
I absolutely love that. Yeah, one of the things that I've I think I've seen that I think is the truth is that if you have an ideology that is in any way based on hope and possibility and the possibility of a better future and all of that, there's no amount of arguing to someone that is going to be effective, that's going to work. But showing someone that they matter and you care, and there is a different reality other than the like dog eat dog, everyone's out for themselves. That's the only honesty in the world is people who will tell you they're lying. That just demonstrating that in the ways that we do, in the acts that we do, in listening to each other, in doing something kind, that's going to make someone potentially adopt a different reality more, in a more profound way than anything else. That's going to actually touch people's hearts and minds, if anything is. And again, I don't think that's why you go out and you do it, is I'm going to change this person. I think you do it just because you truly believe that person is of value, because you know that there is goodness there, because you know that they're probably been hurt enough that they don't believe there's goodness anymore, and they think that's how they have to behave. And so I think, to me, this work is so crucial. Again, as Misha said, it's not said there isn't value in many different types of activism, but I don't think all those other types of activism work on their own without this work as well. Because I think we deeply need to know as human beings that there is community and there is support and there is goodness in the world. So that's
Well, we're definitely not gonna be able to get to everyone. I'm so sorry. I'm apologizing in advance, but we're gonna start with Samuel's question. How would you say is a good way to react with kindness while still making it clear that someone's actions/words are not acceptable? I found that many times a kind reaction is perceived as an acceptance of the behavior. I'm gonna let y'all both fight for it.
Well, I'm not a family systems therapist, but I can say that I think you can very easily say, I don't like what you said, or I don't agree with what you said. You can use language that is very clear in a very kind way. You can even be kind and very firm. You can even be assertive in your kind. Like kindness doesn't have to, I think it's an interesting thing. I think we think of kindness as like being like a tiny little inoffensive mouse, but actually it can be very kind to say that is unjust. What is
yeah.
happening here is unjust. And you can say it assertively and with strength and with power behind you and still be operating from a place of kindness. So I think it's just a matter of actually being in touch with, your heart and
Yeah.
what is authentic. It is kind to protect somebody who is being persecuted, and sometimes that means like physically protecting them
Yeah,
with
or saying no, this is not acceptable, or saying
right.
I know I sometimes do surprise staff members because there are times where something is done and I'm like, no, that does not fly, and I'm very clear about that, and I have no problem being assertive, and I think that is kind because ultimately fewer people get hurt if you say, don't do this thing. And I think you have to say it with assertiveness. I can give you examples of just even like I don't like uh friendly behavior when you think someone is doing wrong. And I remember I actually had one of those awkward social things where someone I knew had done something bad to someone else, but I would see them at parties and they would always be like, hi, whatever. And so at a party, you're kind of obligated to say hi back. And then I felt like I was saying, it's okay, you did this thing that was hurtful. So I actually asked the person to sit down for coffee with me. And I said, I just want to explain, when I see you, I'm not going to be, overtly rude, but I am not okay with you doing X, Y, and Z. And I really think you need to make that up to the person. And I think you're a good person underneath. And when you do, make amends for, these things that you've done. If they forgive you, I forgive you. But until then, I don't. And it felt so good to say that honestly. And I don't think that was unkind. And actually, eventually, they did make up for it, and the people started getting along again. And I could feel like I wasn't being false. Um, so
Yeah, in a sense, like being false and being artificially kind is
yeah,
unkind. That can be
yeah,
unkind because you're allowing something that is toxic to perpetuate, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and I know that the saying that a lot of us at Random Acts and that came from Holly, I believe, was kindness is not meek, kindness has a spine. I know that
That came from Misha.
it came from Misha. Okay.
Did
Yeah.
it?
You did.
I was like,
It was something you wrote, and then but Holly
uh,
loved it so much that she would
oh,
repeat it.
that's funny. You just said it, and I was like, well, that was very wise of her. Very wise. That
I'm afraid I've done that
I'm gonna
to
steal
stuff
that.
too. I've done that to stuff where they're like blah blah blah, and oh, that's a brilliant idea, and they're like, that was
That was
yours.
your idea.
Oh.
That's funny. This is a good question. How do you reground yourselves once you do start to feel that burnout?
I think that this is something that I've been working on, but it's really just finding a way to build time into the calendar to unburden yourself, have some space in the calendar, spend some time, in my case, spend some time with the kids and cooking and not feeling like overwhelmed by a to-do list. And I have to be proactive about that.
I think it's scheduling the time. And for me, like I don't need days off as much as I need time in a day to breathe and feel that sense of space and recalibrate so I can be present for other people. And that's something that's really important to me. And because I burn out when I don't have that. And I think I schedule it in. Someday you have to be strong about like, no, I can't take that meeting at that time because I need, it's so easy to give up that self-care time or whatever, anti-burnout time. But I think that we have to be insistent upon it.
I agree. All right. What is your favorite small act of kindness to do each day? Be for yourself, someone else. Someone's a nice question. Thanks, Emmy.
Do you have one, Rach?
No, I mean, I think I don't know. I think what it is I love being present for people and listening and letting myself get out of the way and just really like I fall in and I think you all know this. I fall in love with like everyone on this staff. I think your story, like I want to hear about your school days and your family days and your whatever. And I think to me, I don't know, it's an act of kindness for myself too, because I always leave any interaction so uplifted. It's energizing, but I think kind of like for me, I don't know what that is. It's let myself get out of the way and just be present, I think is the best act of kindness for myself and for others, hopefully. Actually.
Misha, any thoughts?
I don't know if I really have an everyday, I don't like have a program of kindness that I can think of, but one thing that occurs to me is I have kids in my life, and I notice sometimes that I notice myself reminding myself to say yes to things when my tired 50-year-old self does not want to. Like, for example, this morning I was sitting on the couch working on my computer like a boring old 50-year-old will, and my daughter had slime, like that silly putty. It's not silly putty, but it's slime. I don't know what the hell this stuff is. All I know is that once it gets in the fabric, you might as well burn it because it never comes out. And I hate it because invariably it does get into the upholstery and the fabric and the rugs. And also, like, it's gross because it's picking up all the dirt. She was rolling it and like she got ants in it. And she was like, oh, cool. Now there's ants in my. It's like, this is disgusting. This is a health hazard and it's ruining the house. And she brought the slime over to the couch and she said, Dad, will you help me blow a bubble with the slime? And I wanted to just grab it and throw it in the trash. But instead, I helped her blow a bubble with the slime. So it was like my begrudging act of kindness with my child. But I try to run this filter with them as often as I can of like, can I say yes to this? Can I find a way to say yes to this? And I think it improves the whole family dynamic when I remember to do that.
It's a good answer.
But there's fucking slime everywhere. So I don't know. Is it worth it? I'm not sure.
And in a world of social media and being online, how do you make yourself commit to kindness as a reward for yourself rather than others? It's a good answer.
Do
I mean,
you? Do you?
to be honest with you, I have really been unplugging from social media. Like I'm not doing a lot of reading of the comments or whatnot. I'm still engaging because I think it's very useful to be engaged in social media these days, and to completely unplug, I think would be to give up a really incredibly valuable resource. And I don't want to do that. But I am like, I'm not spending time on Twitter anymore because I found that that's like a particularly toxic environment. And I'm for the most part not reading comments either. So maybe my approach is one of denial. I'm advocating for denial and ignoring. Ignorance is bliss. That's my approach.
Love it. No, same. I think I just try to avoid it.
Yeah, I agree.
I think I come from the, I not sure, but I think I got onto Twitter in 2009 or something like that. It's been an awfully long time, 15 years. And being like on a TV show and having a large number of followers, I've had a lot of time to acclimate to maybe, I have had hundreds or thousands of comments on every post for a long time, which means that I've had ample time to kind of get inured to that noise, and so it's now kind of easy to tune it out. I think it might be different if I had fewer followers and each comment really had like was weighted more differently. Like if only 5 people were commenting on what I posted and I knew all of them personally, that might be a very different dynamic for me. I don't know, but I think it's a little bit easier to disconnect for me from social media than it might be for other people because I actually don't have a personal connection to most of the people that are commenting. They're anonymous for the most part, right? So I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't know who that person is. As far as I know, that person is a Russian bot. So
I
I
will say, because I do tend to like it when I post, I don't post that often, but when I post, if there are likes, I do try to read each comment and thank people or give a like or whatever, because I don't have an as overwhelming amount. But um, but I think I there's something that I hold on to, which is the idea that whatever anyone's saying, good or bad, is usually more of a reflection of themselves and where they're at. So also, I think when people are saying really good things, it's not like, oh, I'm so awesome. It's more like, wow, they really like I think they're probably a really beautiful person. Or would the fact that they would imbue me with those qualities or see that is more of an encouragement about good people being in the world than it is that I am that thing, whatever they think. Um,
You hear that,
does that,
everyone?
yeah.
So if you compliment Rachel, that means that you're a good person.
Okay.
Just food for thought if you wanna.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I did set that up.
The chat is just exploded with people making positive
With
comments,
good people.
Rachel. So I guess there's good people on this chat as
Those
well.
good people.
See. We all want to go, go, go all day and do as much good in the world as we can, but how do we balance that while also feeling like we're doing enough? It's a great question, Haley. Anyone?
Well, I think we kind of like talked about that a little bit earlier, but I think that it is really just a matter of finding the balance, you know? There is also, I don't want to discount one thing, which is I think that life ebbs and flows, and there are times when we really are in like a super energized, like, I want to work on this thing for 14 hours today.
Yep.
And that's awesome when you're in that space and you can get so much done. I mean, that's like being on a film production or something. Like when I have been working on a film production or directing something, it's like I just put in another 16-hour day and I feel great. And you can do that for stretches of weeks or months at a time and not feel totally depleted. But then that has to be a part of a cycle. You can't do that forever. I used to do these large scale art installations, and invariably, when those were coming together, it meant like more or less staying up for like 3 days straight at the end. And at the end, it was so satisfying. and then you were so exhausted and you had to
Yeah.
sleep for a couple of days. And that was like, that was okay. It was okay to be in that rhythm. But as long as it's like a part of an ebb and a flow and a cycle, and not just this is my lifestyle, like I never stop. Um, I think that you can definitely work in those spurts of energy. But balance in general is really key.
Mm. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you because I lived the first part of my life really like that. But I will say work like this where it's showing up every day or whatever, you have to come up with a different, cadence, as you said. You have to come up with a different plan of and different intensity levels. Um, but uh, but yeah, I love, that said, there can be a given project or something that you can throw yourself into. And that is, I think you have to account for also when you're working on something that truly inspires you, it's like giving as well. There's an energy you get out of that. So we all have to measure that for ourselves, but it
Yeah.
is a really important equation not to lose track of.
I tend to work in that mode. Like I have these stretches of really sort of more contemplative, creative work where it's, more measured and balanced. But I tend to like come up with have an idea and then just like want to materialize it and and I have a lot of energy. And I like to bring other people along for those. And sometimes I can be a really terrible person to work with or for, because a lot of times people are in that like cadence of, we're plugging away here. We've been working, a lot every day. And then when I come in and I throw something like, hey, great idea, let's do this big project right now. A lot of times people are like, but I'm already doing other projects and there's not that energy. And so I can be a challenge to work with other people, because I can get into my own. I mean, this has been an ongoing problem with random acts, because I'll be like, hey, I have an idea. And everybody's like, well, yeah, actually, but you also had a lot of other ideas that we're still like trying to figure out how to materialize. And can you please just leave us alone? Um, I just saw a lot of hearts come up on the chat. So I think that I'm saying something that resonates for here. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, everybody. But
And it's not really fair because I tend to fall into that also, like, oh, this is so exciting, let's do this right now. So yeah, I don't help. I don't help them.
sorry.
We love you.
Well, we are at 2 minutes. We have 2 minutes left. Thank you so much for everyone for their questions. I'm so sorry that we weren't able to get to all of them. I'm gonna close it out with asking each of you what you think the viewer should take away from this panel, and what you hope they carry forward into the day. Let's start with Misha.
Well, thank you everybody for squandering part of your Saturday with us. And thank you, Maddie, for moderating so adeptly. Nice job. You're like a seasoned pro here. Rach, thank you for everything. You have been such an inspiration in your tireless devotion to this work and the way you keep showing up in the face of not only like very often organizational adversity, but also like you're just such a shining example of how to take the adversities in your own life with grace um, and acceptance. And so I just feel really grateful to get to work with you and to get to, we talked about modeling earlier, but I think that you have been such a great model and someone that I think of often as a model. So just thank you for your example in all of this.
Okay, well, I'm like filled to the brim and don't know what to do with all that, but thank you very much. But I've said to you before too, like this work has saved my life in so many ways, I think, because it is just completely aligned and life-giving to me, and just so getting to work with all of you, getting to do things like this and see how much good there is in the world and how many people there are trying to create good. So I can never thank you enough, Misha, for giving me this opportunity, but also all of you for being who you are in the world, because that is 100%, 1,000% everything that keeps me going. And I think that I just hope we can all keep each other going, and that's what I want. That's what I would like for everyone to take from this. I hope that it's a little bit of hope and energy going forward into our lives, because we've all got a lot to deal with and confront, and I think it's important to have these spaces we can go to and tap back into that kind of source of like, oh, joy and goodness and reminder that you're not alone, and that's what this group does. And thank you, Misha, for letting me be a part of that.
Well, thank you.
Thank you everyone so much for joining. We have to run because I have another panel right now. Join us for the mental health and kindness panel right now, and for the rest of them throughout the weekend. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you so much, Misha, for joining, and thank you, Rachel, as well. And we will see you guys at the next one. Bye,
All right. Bye, everyone.